Do you know what will happen to all your assets and debts when you pass away? Well, in this video, I'm going to talk about estate planning. I'll explain what it is, why it's important, and all the various components it comprises. By the end, you'll walk away with a much better understanding of all the documents you need in place to help your family avoid curveballs and keep their focus on what's truly important: you. Welcome to Refactor Your Money. I'm Max, an accredited financial counselor, here to help you break free from financial stress and start living a life of purpose. So what exactly is estate planning? Well, it's basically the specific arrangements we make during our lifetime that lay out all of our wishes for the way we'd like the administration and distribution of our estate to happen once we die. In other words, it basically defines how all of our assets transfer such that they go to all the correct heirs that we desire and avoid all the unnecessary probate costs and other court procedures after we pass away and we're gone. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, I don't really want to have to think about that. Thinking about my own mortality is kind of gross. It's a little morbid. I don't really want to have to deal with all that stuff. Can't my family just figure it out once I'm gone? The answer is they can, but there are 3 reasons why you shouldn't make them do that. Reason number 1 is to avoid family disputes and unnecessary legal battles. Without a clear set of instructions directly from you, the rest of your family could easily disagree about the distribution of assets and lead to costly and frankly very emotionally draining legal battles. It's easy for disputes to pop up over things like who should be the executor of the will, who should be the guardians for any minor children left behind, or who should be responsible for any legal or medical decisions if you become incapacitated. By laying out your instructions very clearly up front during your lifetime, you help your family avoid those unnecessary squabbles and clashes once you're not around to make those decisions for yourself. Reason number 2 that estate planning is important is that it helps avoid unnecessary costs and delays when settling your estate. Without a well-constructed estate plan, your assets can end up going through probate, a court-supervised process that's time-consuming and expensive. It involves a lot of legal and administrative fees. It involves legal fees, court costs, and executor administrative fees, all which can significantly reduce the value of your estate. And on top of that, probate can take months, sometimes even years, leaving your loved ones without access to the funds they need for daily living expenses or other immediate needs. And reason number 3 that estate planning is important is that it helps you avoid a loss of control and unintended beneficiaries of your estate. Without a well-formed estate plan, state law will often become the fallback for the distribution of an estate. If you die without a will, the state's intestacy laws will start to dictate the distribution of your assets, which may not align with your wishes. Your assets could go to individuals that you didn't even intend, including distant relatives or even some to the state. And without proper legal documents, decisions about your healthcare or finances could be made by a court-appointed individual rather than someone that you trust. So now that you know the 3 reasons why estate planning matters and why it's so important to create a well-crafted estate plan, let's move on to the 3 key things you need to do in order to create one. But first, if you're getting value from this video, I really hope I can ask you the favor of liking and subscribing. This is a small channel. I'm really hoping to get it to take off a little bit so I can help more people, and subscribing and liking really helps the channel. So in thinking about how to create a well-crafted estate plan, there are really 3 main steps you need to take. Step 1 is setting up transfer by contract assets. This basically means ensuring that all of your assets transfer immediately to an intended individual and sidestep probate altogether through a transfer by contract arrangement. Now, there are 3 types of transfer on contract designations. Type 1 is transfer by beneficiary. Type 2, transfer by property ownership. And type 3, transfer by payable on death. Now, transfer by beneficiary designation is most commonly available on retirement accounts like 401ks or 403bs. Now, the way this works is you name a beneficiary through submitting a form to the administrator of that account, and that form designates who your money should transfer to upon your death. It's widely available, as I said, on retirement accounts, and it's super simple to do. So make sure, if you have any employee-sponsored retirement accounts, that you first start there and set up some designations. Often there's a primary designation, and you can also set up one or many secondary beneficiaries in the case that the primary beneficiary is also deceased. Now, the second type, transfer by property ownership designation, is essentially joint tenancy with right of survivorship, and it's the most common way of owning an asset jointly, especially among married couples. It essentially means that both parties own the asset in its entirety. Now, this is really common with things like joint bank accounts, vehicles, homes, or even investment accounts, right? And basically it means if one of the parties passes away, the other party continues to own that asset in its entirety and both parties have full right to 100% of the asset. Now, under this type of ownership, if one party is to pass away, the other party takes over full ownership of that asset under the operation of the law, rather than through the provisions of a will. Now, a home is a perfect example of this, right? In most cases for married couples, if one spouse is to pass away, they're going to want the other spouse to maintain 100% ownership and decision-making privileges over that home, as they'll likely continue to live in it going forward. That's preferable to having to split the other half of ownership with a series of other beneficiaries of the original deceased partner. Now, the third type, transfer by payable on death designation, is most common on bank accounts. And the way this works is you basically go to your financial institution, your bank, and you submit a payable on death designation form. Now, what this basically does is it tells the bank that in the case of your death, they are to transfer your account to the person named on that transfer on death beneficiary designation form. Now, often what happens is that will allow the account to avoid probate, and what the beneficiary or the heir is going to need to do is present your death certificate to the bank along with proper identification to prove that they are who they are. And as long as that transfer on death designation form is there with the bank on file, they should release that account to that heir and to that beneficiary without any questions asked. No need to go through any type of probate or court process. So that's step one of an effective and comprehensive estate plan. Go through all your transfer by contract options and set those up. And now, just as a quick recap, those three types are transfer by beneficiary designation, transfer by property ownership designation, and transfer by payable on death designation. Once you've taken those three steps and covered off all three of those options, you're done with step one and you can move on to step two, which is the creation of a will. Now, a will is just a written document in which you, the testator, defines how you want all your remaining probate property to be distributed after your death. Now, there are three quick nuances about a will that are worth knowing. First, a will is very unlikely to be challenged in court. So if you have a will, it's very unlikely that the probate process is going to involve any sort of challenges from creditors or any sort of challenges from disgruntled family members, right? A will is generally rock solid. It's very unlikely to be overruled by a challenge in court. Number two, dying without a will leaves you susceptible to the probate court process, and it's called being intestate. And nuance number three is that wills are valid under state law, not federal law. So if you're going to move states, or you have a plan or have moved states since you wrote your first will, you need to go back and do it again in your current state. So now most wills, once you actually create one, will include things like naming all the assets that you want to have distributed, naming the beneficiaries and the heirs that you want them to be distributed to, as well as the way you want them distributed. Then you'll also, if you have minor children, you'll name guardians for those minor children, as well as someone to manage the finances or any inherited assets that those minor children might have inherited from you. Some sort of financial trustee who can manage that stuff for the children until they either come of age or reach a certain age of your designation in the will. And then the last thing you'll do in the will is you will name an executor. Now, this is the person who's basically going to be in charge of settling your estate for you. And what that looks like is doing things like collecting and actually tracking down all the assets that you've named, paying off any debts, collecting any life insurance policies you may have had. So it's a lot of sort of administrative paperwork, a lot of legal work, and it's generally a good idea to hire a professional to do this. So most of the time, you will want to name either your own estate attorney or some sort of other attorney who can handle this for you, or you could name potentially an accountant or a CPA who could potentially do this for you. But you generally want to handle a professional for this because it is a lot of legal and administrative heavy lifting. It can get really complex, and it is not a simple process. If you do hire a professional, generally the service fees for that range somewhere between 3 to 5% of the value of the estate. So keep that in mind when naming your executor, but again, generally a good idea to go with a professional. In terms of how to actually go about creating a will, you've got a few options for this. I mentioned using an estate attorney as your executor for your will. There are estate attorneys who can also, of course, help you draft up these wills. You can basically go into their office, they can help walk you through some of these steps, and they can basically get all of the legal documentation posed for you, written up, filed, saved in their office, for example, that kind of thing. If you don't have an overly complex estate, or you don't want to go the route of an actual attorney, a legal professional, what you can do is use an online service like LegalZoom or Trust and Will, and they're fantastic resources. There are other ones as well, but those are fantastic resources for coming up with sort of like basic wills, just so you can lock this step down, so you can move on to the third step of finishing your comprehensive estate plan. And that brings us to step 3, which is our advance directive documentation. Now, in steps 1 and 2, we laid out all the groundwork for where our assets and debts will go once we have passed away, so that our loved ones know exactly what's going to happen. We can avoid probate court as much as possible, not get our assets and our estate bogged down in the legal process and the red tape and the bureaucracy of the courts. But there's one last step, and that is to define and lay out very clearly what you want to have happen if before you die, you are somehow incapacitated in some way and unable to make your own decisions, both medically and financially. And that is done through advance directive documents. Now, there are 3 components of this last step, the advance directive documents. And those 3 components are a living will, a healthcare proxy, and a durable power of attorney. I'm going to walk through each of those one by one and just give a little color on each one of them. Now, a living will, much like a will, is basically going to lay out your wishes, right? It's what your will is, but it's while you're alive. That's why it's called a living will. So it essentially lays out our instructions for what we want to have happen for us medically if we are alive but incapacitated. So this basically allows you to tell your friends, family, and medical care team what you want in terms of life-prolonging care or cases of complete unconsciousness, right? This tells them what to do in different scenarios if you are medically incapacitated and you are not able to legally consent to your own choices medically. Now, component number 2, the healthcare proxy, goes right along with this. So in your living will, you write out and make very clearly in documentation what you want to have happen. Your healthcare proxy, which is part 2, is designating a person who can make those decisions for you, right? So if you're in a coma, for example, your physician, your attorney, and anyone else in your care team, your relatives, whoever may be around you at that time, is going to lean on your living will to see what you want to have happen. Now, at some point, likely, someone on the medical care team is going to have to get consent from someone to actually execute that living will, right? So they're going to need, because you will be unconscious in a coma, they're going to need somebody they can turn to just give the green light to go ahead and proceed with what you've laid out in your living will. And that person is your healthcare proxy. So potentially, another alternative is to find someone in your life who is maybe not super close to you, but that you trust, cares about you, and is aligned with you on end-of-life care philosophies, right? Where that person can step in collaboration with the friends and family to make that decision, so that you are not putting that on the people closest to you who are going to be very, 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 very emotionally charged in a moment of medical incapacity for you. Now, you don't have to do it that way. That's just the way that some people have done it. It's totally your choice. Maybe you do completely trust your spouse or child or sibling to make a cogent choice for you as your proxy. Go ahead. If that's the case, go ahead and designate them. But that is one thing to think about, is the level of closeness to you and the level of grief or angst that person will be going through in light of your, or in the face of your medical incapacity. Now, the last component that I mentioned is durable power of attorney. Now, this is essentially someone who serves with absolute power to manage all of your financial affairs when you are faced with medical incapacity, right? When you're physically incapable or mentally incapable of making your own decisions. You're still going to have your bank accounts out there. You're still going to have your investments out there. You're still going to have all kinds of other affairs. You may have business affairs out there, right? You are not going to be able to make those decisions because you will be incapacitated. It's your durable power of attorney, the person you designate there, who's going to be making those decisions for you. Now, because this person, like I mentioned, has virtually absolute power, it's extremely important to choose somebody that you totally trust. The person you name can make bank transactions in your name. They can collect Social Security. They can apply for disability benefits. They have all kinds of power, and they're going to be doing all of this on your behalf while you're incapacitated. So again, you need to be 100% sure that this is a person you can trust and that is reliable, that can serve these purposes for you while you are incapacitated. Now, there's another option here, which is limited power of attorney. And now this is much like durable. The only difference is that the scope is limited, right, as it says in the name. So in this document where you name a limited power of attorney, you designate a person just like you would for durable, but it is limited in scope. So you also define in this document what the scope of that is. So this could be like signing your name at the closing of a real estate transaction, for example, right? So you might want someone who can go and do that for you, but You don't want to give them full autonomy and full power over all of your finances, right? You want them to step in for this one specific purpose, to serve this for you until you're back on your feet. That is that is a limited power of attorney. So they can go do that one task or two tasks or whatever specific sort of umbrella of tasks you designate in this limited power of attorney document. They can go do that and nothing more. So if you are a little squeamish about a full durable power of attorney, limited power of attorney is also an option for you. So once you finish these three components of your living will, your healthcare proxy, and your durable power of attorney, you've now finished your advanced directive document step 3, and you should be left here at the end with a complete and comprehensive estate plan that includes your transfer by contract documentation, your will, and your advanced directive documents. And at that point, you can rest assured that you're very well covered and everyone in your family is going to know exactly what to do in the event of your unfortunate and unanticipated passing. Also, if you're interested, I have a couple of other free guides and resources that I love to offer to all my viewers. The first one is my 30-day refactor guide. And basically what it is, it's a 1-month step-by-step guide that helps you gain some clarity about where your finances are today, what matters to you, and how you can start reshaping them and launch yourself on a trajectory to living a life of purpose. Again, it's free, step-by-step guide, 30 days, and gets you sort of going from zero to moving in 30 days time. Now, second is my personal financial tracking template. Now, this is a template that I have shown in previous videos. I'll link one of them up above here. You can click to and sort of get a short demo of it. But this is something that I used myself when I was working on my own financial turnaround a number of years ago. And I also offer it up to my clients. I work on it with them and give it to them as a resource as well. Again, it's free. It helps you with calculating your net worth, tracking your cash flow, understanding the full picture of your financial health using a series of financial ratios. So again, it's free. Link down below to click and get that if you'd like. And lastly, I'd love to ask you a favor that, again, if you got any value out of this video, I would really love it if you would subscribe or like the video. This is a small channel. I started it very recently, but the whole goal of this channel is to really help you start living a life of purpose. This is something that I have been growing into myself. I started my own financial turnaround back in 2018 when my son was born. And it has really been incredible to me how much my life has changed after I've been able to get a real good active handle on my finances and start living my life in a way that is aligned with my money. So I really want you to be able to achieve that yourself. I do truly, truly believe that life can change very quickly, surprisingly quickly, once you are on top of your money. So I would love to have this channel grow. I would love it if you would leave a comment below with some challenge you might be facing financially that I can help you with and get you going on that trajectory. So I hope that helped. Again, I really, really, really love doing these videos for you. And I hope you will stick around and that I will get to see you in another video. So thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next one.